make sure there's a decent introduction. All of this is intentional to sort of create a critical context for reviewers and people to think about the work and to understand it. So we are doing that, and then we're also encouraging whole books. There's a wonderful book on Sudanese poetry that book of sort of the history of Sudanese poetry and so that we published recently, along with an anthology of Sudanese poetry that was recently translated. Beautiful translation. It's stunning work that's worth paying attention to. But the other thing we're doing is because we're engaging the digital archives, and we're engaging work with libraries in Togo, in Ghana, in South Africa. Currently, these are some of the places. We are now getting access to their entire archive of dissertations, master's theses. What people don't know is there are so many exceptionally beautiful dissertations and theses on African poetry, which are just sitting there. I came across one on oral traditions in Accra, and looking at it in comparison, sort of with the published work and so on. I mean, really smart stuff. What is happening to all of these students who are doing this work is, you know, in the last 30 or so years, is they do it, and then they either go on to do a PhD abroad and so on and so forth, and they can't find somebody to work on African stuff, so they have to find some other topic or do fiction or something like that. So this work is sitting there. So now we're scouring through that to find work that we think we have to publish, and try to find the people who wrote these pieces. So again, this flooding idea, but it's a way to say that work has been done, work is being done. The problem is we just don't have access to it.
Right.
It's not like so sometimes people say, well, it's just not been done. It's been done. People have done the work. But there was they knew that nobody's going to say, I'm going to take this thesis on the poetry traditions in a small village, in Togo, and we're going to publish it. Right? What we are doing is creating a framework in which it makes sense to publish that work, because it's in dialogue with all these other voices, whether they're in South Africa or whether it's in Boston, and to give context for it. And so that's the team is now going through all of this work to start thinking about it. But at the very least, we are identifying it, cataloging it, naming, describing it, right, and making that available for people who are interested and so on. Yeah.
So the writers are in various countries in Africa.
Yeah.
The publishing is happening in Nebraska.
Yes, Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska. We are the center of African poetry.
That is deeply ironic.
It's deeply ironic. Yeah.
But then, where do the books go?
That's it. That's it. That's it. So there's an ethical question. It's a troubling ethical question. Because here's the thing. We are based in the United States of America. And so we are engaged in a publication mechanism that is hard to distinguish from an imperialist enterprise. So how do we counter that? How do we have to be aware of that implication? Well, we counter that by ensuring that the entire framework and the entire fabric of how we identify writers, how we edit, and what the team is that the team is consciously and effectively African in its sensibility and its approach and its identity and its so on. So that's one thing that we think of. But the other thing that we have to think about is how is work distributed in Africa? Now, many of you would know this. And it's very likely that if you have a book published in Nigeria and you want to get a copy of that book in Ghana, you have to go to Britain to get a hold of that book. Right? Amazon and so on and so forth makes it easier, but Amazon has,